as we look out at the world this evening, what we mostly see is people thinking, what's in it for me? How can I benefit? How can I get my way? How can I be important? And these are the kind of ideas that, by and large, many people operate their lives from. And what we're trying to do as Buddhists, especially Buddhists following the Bodhisattva path, is to completely transform that motivation so that when we look at things, we're thinking, what is of the greatest benefit for all living beings in the long term? And that's the criteria we use. And if we have to give up some of our own worldly happiness or possessions or whatever to live according to that value, we're not at all depressed. We don't have a feeling of being deprived. So this is the way we're aiming to train our mind to overcome that self-centered thought and to really think in terms of the long-term benefit of living beings. And not just their temporary benefit in samsara, but really the benefit from being free of samsara, and even the benefit beyond that of becoming fully awakened. So as we continually stretch our mind to include more realistic, more beneficial, and bigger perspectives. So while we stretch the mind in that direction, there might be a little bit discomfort, but also let's remember the joy that comes from overcoming the self-centered thought and really dedicate ourselves to that process, knowing that in the end it brings the happiness of self and others and a stable, lasting happiness. So let's make that our long-term motivation for sharing the evening together. So we've been doing the noble practice of trying to understand Dan Perdue's book, The Course in Buddhist Reasoning and Debate. So before we go back to where we were last week, which I have to find. Okay, come on. I'm using a Kindle thing, and it's not always going where you want it to go. Okay. We left off with tabby cats. Oh, there it is. Okay. But let me open another file. Uh-oh, did I put it on this? Yeah, it's on this computer. Okay. Okay, so first of all, Venerable Tarpa wrote a question because she's asking, what in the world are we comparing when we're doing these things, okay? And so there's a few reasons why the topic's confusing. One is that he's written two books about it. One is the recent one, The Course in Debate. the other one is his previous one, and he's changed some of the terminologies and expression from one to the other. So if you go back and forth between them, you might not be exactly sure what he's saying. Another thing is that he explains the principles, but he explains the exceptions very early on. So you've barely been able to understand the basic idea before you get the exceptions, and that makes it difficult. Then third thing is you're translating from Tibetan, and especially Tibetan, this discerning what is singular and plural is not always obvious, and they don't have the factors of a or the to differentiate what you're talking about. So that makes it difficult, because if you translate it literally, it doesn't fit in normal English. Okay, so having said all that, the things that you're comparing, he says, are collective entities, which means that you're comparing groups. Okay, so if we say, the self is impermanent because of being a product, when we do the pervasion, we're comparing the group of things that are products and the group of things that are impermanent. Yeah, it's just that simple. We don't use the word all because they don't have that in Tibetan. Yeah, and so we just leave it like that. The difficult thing is then when he introduces the exception, for example, definition. Yeah, so if you take all the group of all things that are definitions, the word definition is not a member of that group. Okay, if you take all things that are products, product is a member of product, but definition isn't a member of definition. So, you just have to be aware of the few times when you run up into things like that, and to figure out what is really meant. Yeah, when they say definition, are they talking about the group of definitions, or are they talking about definition just as an isolated thing, not relating to anything else? In which case, the definition is a definiendum, not a definition. Okay, so that's basically the thing. Okay, I hope that makes the mud a little clearer, maybe. Okay, but I don't wig out on it. Just do it the way it feels natural, and then if something doesn't work, then we'll look at what the exceptions are. That's the best way. Okay. Okay. Then you had homework from last week. Did you do your homework? How many people did their homework? Oh, good. So Venerable Samten sent me some of her homework because she had a root canal done today and she wasn't sure if she would be making it to class, which she didn't. So I thought I'd start with some of hers, okay? Because hers really show how we have to learn first about how to create a syllogism, okay? But let's start with one, okay? So the homework for last week was, because we're learning about syllogisms and then the 3 criteria of a valid syllogism, was I said we often run our lives with a lot of syllogisms that we aren't even aware of, and that may or may not be valid and often aren't. Okay, and then I asked people to write some of their syllogisms. Okay, so here's one that she wrote. I am a dull disciple because I cannot quickly formulate and articulate questions during teachings. Okay, how many of you say that to yourselves? Oh, okay. So look at that. Yeah. What's the subject? Let me read it again. So you might want to write it down so you can look at it. I am a dull disciple because I cannot quickly formulate and articulate questions during teachings. What's the subject? I. What's the predicate? Am a dull disciple. And what's the reason? Because I can't quickly formulate and articulate questions during teachings. What is the thesis that is trying to be proven? Yeah, I am a dull disciple. Okay, so what's the property here? If you look at the first criteria, property, does the reason apply to the subject? What are you looking at here? Okay, so it's not being able to quickly formulate and articulate questions during teachings. Does that pertain to me? Well, you may say yes, but does that mean there's no exceptions to that? That reason is always a property of the subject? There's never any exceptions? That's not true. Yeah, so the first criteria is missing. Yeah. The property does not apply to the subject. Okay, so yeah, she has to accurately ascertain this. Yeah, can you accurately ascertain that you cannot quickly formulate and articulate questions during teachings? Implying forever in the past, present, and future, you cannot do that? Can that be accurately ascertained with a valid cognizer? No. Okay. Then what would the pervasion be? So we already know the syllogism doesn't work, but let's look at the pervasion too. What would the pervasion be? Yeah, no, if I cannot formulate and articulate questions, I necessarily am a dull disciple. Or whoever cannot quickly formulate and articulate questions is necessarily a dull disciple. Is that true? There's no pervasion. Why not? Somebody could be very sharp, but just not have that particular ability to do things very quickly in teachings. Okay. So many of you raised your hands that you tell the syllogism to yourself. Are you telling yourself the truth? No, this is a bunch of you're so polite. I was going to use a Trumpian expression. Yeah. Was it helpful to discover how illogical your mind is? Do you want to give us one of your syllogisms? Okay, let me write it down. So what's the subject? Mind. What's the predicate? Yeah, becomes anxious. And what's the reason? Because I future trip successfully. Everybody know what future success excessive. I wrote successfully. Successfully. Okay. Well, sometimes we do future trip successfully. Okay, so because I future trip successfully, yeah. Or another way to make it more general is a person gets anxious because they future trip excessively. Yeah, it sounds different when you say a person than when you say me, don't you? Doesn't it? Okay. Well, let's stick with here we said my mind. Okay. So, what's the property here? Yeah. So future tripping successfully, excessively. Okay. Excessively. No, but there's a little problem because how do you measure? You have to be more succinct. What is excessive? This syllogism isn't going to work because it's too vague. Because again, we have to be specific. One person constantly 24 hours a day. Is that what you mean? The future trip 24 hours a day? Okay, so right away here we see we need to actually learn how to write a syllogism that can properly work. Okay, let me read you another one of Venerable Sumpton's. Okay, and tell me if this one is a syllogism that would work. When people agree to do something, they should honor the agreement because this demonstrates respect and the ability to follow through. That's something we tell ourselves all the time. Okay? Yes. Okay. When people agree to do something, they should honor, or she wrote actually, when people agree to something, they should honor the agreement because this demonstrates respect and the ability to follow through. Now, what's the subject here? Do you see already? The subject is not clear. Yeah, you have to write a specific subject. Okay, so we'll start out. Yeah. People who agree to do things. We'll just leave it. Yeah, okay. People who agree to do things. Okay. Then what's the predicate? Should honor the agreement. Is that a good predicate? Does should work in a predicate?
Should doesn't work at all.
Should, exactly. Yeah. Should does not make a reliable syllogism. Yeah, because should is a value judgment. And how is somebody going to ascertain that with a reliable cognizer? Should is the same thing like excessively or constantly. It's too vague. Okay, so how would you make the predicate then? Is that what you wanted to prove? That they're respectful? What is it that you want to prove?
They should be respectful. That's what we're trying to do.
No. Okay, let's try that. Are respectful because they follow through. Okay, so what's the property? Does following through apply to people? No.
What is she trying to prove?
That's the question. That's the question. You see how we think? We're not really clear what it is we're trying to prove. Basically, in the formulation here, with the word should, the syllogism is people. The syllogism is anybody who is worthy of being a human being honors their agreements to me
and follows through all the time.
and follows through all the time because there's, because that's how, because who knows? Because that's my rule of the universe. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah? Okay, so something's not working here. Venerable Seifel, do you have a syllogism for? Okay, what is it? Venerable X, okay, must not give me. Okay, wait a minute. About what to cook for breakfast. This one's going to be good on the debating ground. This one's really going to settle it all because.
At the Abbey, because she's not currently on the Abbey kitchen team.
At the Abbey, because she is not currently on the kitchen team.
That is our rule of the universe.
Yeah, so this one, actually, there's another hidden syllogism, which is, I have a right to be angry because someone
X gave me advice I didn't want.
Yes.
That's an interpretation of
Yeah. You know, lots of times we give one syllogism, but there's actually a hidden one in it. Okay, so Venerable X, what's the subject? Venerable X. Okay, what's the predicate? This must give me advice about what to cook for breakfast at the Abbey. Okay, so she can do it at other places. Okay, we'll just start with the Abbey and work on other places later. And what's the reason?
Because she is not
Currently on, because she, yeah, she's not currently on the kitchen team. Okay, so what are you trying to prove? What's the thesis? She must not. Okay, so must, we have a value judgment. Then you made it more specific from should to must. Okay, so already something, you have words like must and should. Are you going to have a valid syllogism with those words? No, because the you know, you can't talk about something specific. It's too vague what you're talking about. Oh, okay. So Venerable X has no right. Oh, has no right. Oh, okay. Yeah. But again, has no right. What does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, it's against my rules. Venerable X is breaking my rules of the universe. Yeah. Should we try that one? Venerable X is breaking my rules of the universe. That's something specific. We can see what our rules of the universe are until you try and write them out. Okay, is breaking my rules of the universe because she gives me advice about what to cook for breakfast. Breakfast when she's not currently on the kitchen, which is implying that when she is currently on the kitchen team, then then if she gives you advice about what to cook for breakfast when she's on the team, then she's not breaking your rules of the universe. It depends on who Venerable X is also, doesn't it? Yeah? There's an advantage to writing anonymous notes, to typing anonymous notes. You can't write them, people can identify you. By writing an anonymous note, and then people don't know who's saying it. Okay. So what you're trying to prove is, yeah, she's breaking my rules of the universe. Okay. So does the property apply to the subject? Okay, so that's true. Okay. So then, yeah, if here, with the privation, what's the privation? Yeah. So is that true? Some people are saying no, some people are saying yes. Yeah, depends on the person who's giving the advice. And what about if Venerable X, it even is your enemy, you can't stand her guts in our harmonious community. Okay, but she's telling you, don't cook a certain thing because it's rotten. Yeah, so whenever she tells you not to cook something, or what to cook, or what was our thing here, whenever she gives you advice about what to cook for breakfast, even if she's on even if she's not on the kitchen team, is it necessarily breaking your rules of the universe? But let's say she's giving you advice. She's not on the cooking team, and she says, "Don't cook that oatmeal because I saw bugs fly out of it last time I opened the container." So is that breaking your rule of the universe?
Why not?
Is that going to? Yeah. So is that breaking your rule of the universe, or are you going to go, "Thank you very much"? So your rules of the universe include anybody telling you anything, even if it's something that's true and for your own benefit. If they do that, if they say something that's true and for your own benefit, but it's not something that they are permitted by the rules to say to you at that time, then still they're breaking your rule of the universe. Okay, I don't want to work in the kitchen with you. This is what I'm getting at. Yeah. That we say my rules of the universe as if they were always completely clearly formulated. And we expect everybody to know what they are. Even if we haven't formulated them clearly, still other people should know what they are and live according to them.
Well, part of the difficulty of our rules of the universe is they've got should, always, never,
ought to, supposed to. So there's something about our rules of the universe that are not going to be valid in syllogisms. Okay? Does that motivate you to maybe dismantle your rules of the universe? Yeah? Because they really get us in trouble. Yeah. Especially if one of them is, going back, I have am entitled to get angry because somebody did something I don't like. Yeah, that's one we tell ourselves all the time. What's the subject? What's the predicate? I'm entitled to get angry. Already that's vague. What does entitled to get angry mean? Do we have a common definition of what that means? We think we do. Okay. Yeah, it's a human right, yes. Right. It's written up in the UN, validated. It's stamped, yeah. Yeah, and Hillary said women's rights are human rights, so our rights are valid. Okay, hold on. So, and what's the reason? Oh, let's write to the simile. What? Oh, okay, so I am entitled to get angry because someone did something I didn't like. Okay. What are you trying to prove? What's your thesis? I'm entitled to get angry. That's a very important thing to prove, isn't it? Yeah. Because we get angry. So we better have a good reason for getting angry that nobody else can disagree with. Because somebody says to us, that isn't a good reason to get angry, then we're really stuck. And we don't want to admit that, we don't have a good reason. So, yeah, I am entitled to get angry because someone did something I didn't like. Okay, so what's the property? Yeah, so someone did something to me that you have to include to me that I didn't like. Yeah. Well, no, but it's a little bit vague here. If they did something that I don't like to my enemy, who I also don't like, yeah. So we do have to add to me, something I didn't like to me. Because if they just did it in general, I would agree. Mm-hmm. Okay, then what's the provision? Yeah, then I necessarily, no exceptions, am entitled to get angry. That sounds like a real true statement, doesn't it? Yeah. If someone does something I didn't like, I necessarily am entitled to get angry. That's how we live our life, isn't it? Is it true? Does that provision hold? Are you sure you aren't entitled to get angry? When someone does something you didn't like, did you say, oh, but I have a choice about what else to think? Yeah, entitled is a bit too vague. Yeah, it doesn't really hold. But how interesting it is that a syllogism like this, yeah, or we could do it as, well, even my anger is justified because someone did something I did. Same thing, is justified. Justified is very vague, isn't it? Yeah. So we're running into a lot of these problems making valid syllogisms, aren't we? Maybe we better stick with sound being impermanent. But do you see how on an emotional and social level we are constantly writing invalid syllogisms and believing that they are reliable and dependable and true? Does that get us into some trouble? And you don't understand them. Yeah. It's not a belief, it's the truth. I have my truths. And you ignoramus don't accept them. Yeah, this is what is implied in our syllogisms. You had something? I have a right to get angry because
it's my mind that gets angry and suffers.
Because it's my mind that gets angry and suffers. I am entitled to get angry because I'm the one who's suffering from what I do.
I have the right to get angry because it's my mind that gets angry and suffers.
That's like I have a right to commit suicide because it's my life and I'm unrelated and what I do doesn't influence other people. Or I have a right, oh, here's a good one. I have a right to ride a motorcycle without a helmet because it's my life. Yeah, lots of people think like that. And they get really mad if somebody tries to legislate. Do you think that's a good reason for not riding not wearing a helmet because it's my life. We're interrelated with other people, aren't we? It's the same thing with suicide, Oh, it's my life and nobody cares. Wait a minute, that's not true. Yeah. Each one of us, what we do influences other people, and other people care about us. Yeah. Do we really have a right to do things that are going to cause other people pain? Yeah. Shoulds, ought to, supposed to's, don't work. But especially, even with that, I mean, with NVC and just trying to write the bare facts without the emotional stuff, yeah, then that's not easy. Yeah. Because we're very attached to our feelings because they're my feelings and they're my beliefs and they are right because they're mine. That's our syllogism, isn't it? My feelings and beliefs are right because they're mine. Okay. What right means, can be validated. My feelings and beliefs can be validated by a reliable cognizer because they're mine. Okay? So we're trying to prove that my feelings and beliefs can be validated by a reliable cognizer. Because that's what we think. Okay? Because they're mine. So what's the property? Yeah, feelings and beliefs are mine. Okay. If something, then what's the pervasion? No, it's just if something is mine, it is necessarily valid. Is that true? It sounds good, doesn't it? Yes. If something is mine, it's necessarily valid. Yeah. So you might have to do another syllogism to make people understand that. If something that is mine is valid because I never make mistakes. Yeah. We have that syllogism inside of us too, don't we? Yeah. Yeah, well, the always and never means that there's no exceptions. Yeah. Yeah. So then we have to look at our personal syllogisms that we make up, and are there really no exceptions to them? Yeah. That everything I think and feel is right because it's mine. Yeah. So, yeah, always is implied in there. But that makes it that, no exceptions. So, messes up our syllogism. Should we go back to reading from the book? Or, yeah? Okay. Okay. Okay, so he was talking about, similar class and dissimilar class. Okay, so what's the similar class? Yeah, it's everything that's included in the predicate. What's the dissimilar class? Yeah, everything that's outside of the predicate. Okay, so he was just talking about, in the syllogism, sound is an impermanent phenomena because of being a product. Okay, that the reason product and the predicate impermanent phenomena are equivalent. Yeah, everything that is a product is an impermanent phenomena. Okay, so there are two circles are overlapping. Yeah. Okay, but he says, however, in the syllogism, the subject, a tabby cat, is a mammal because of being a cat. Okay, so in that, the similar class is greater in extent than the reason. What's the reason? Being a cat. And what's the similar class? Mammal. So here, if you were going to draw it, cat is a small circle, mammal is a big circle, including it. Okay, so remember, those are the only two ways that you can have privation. Either the two circles, what you're comparing, are equivalent, or the reason is a small circle and the predicate is a big one that encompasses it. Okay, the definition requires that the reason, and I'm saying reason instead of sign, okay, exist exclusively but not necessarily universally in the similar class. Okay, for example, catness exists exclusively but not universally among mammals. Okay, so being a cat, you know, is a quality, one fits into being a mammal, but it doesn't mean that all mammals are cats. Okay, the extent of the reason may be equal to or lesser than the similar class, but it cannot be greater. If it were greater, then you wouldn't have the privation. Okay, consequently, the extent of the similar class may be equal to or greater than that of the sign, but it cannot be less. You should already understand this from what you learned about statements of privation. So, for example, we cannot say the subject, a cat, tabby cat, is a cat because of being a mammal. Okay, why wouldn't that work? Yeah, the class of mammals is much bigger than the class of cats. Yeah. So privation means that the reason is pervaded by the predicate to be proven, as the floor is pervaded by wall-to-wall carpet. Okay? The extent of the reason is either less than or equivalent to the extent of the predicate to be proven. So the extent of the predicate to be proven is either greater than or equivalent to the extent of the reason. That's a lot of words to say what we just said, okay? It's meaning basically what we just said. In general, if the subject has the quality of being that reason, so there's the property of the subject, and whatever is that reason is that predicate to be proven, okay, then there's privation. Then the subject must also have as a quality the predicate to be proven, meaning it's a valid syllogism, okay? Applied to a sample syllogism, sound has the quality of being a product, and whatever is a product is an impermanent phenomena. Thus, sound has the quality of being an impermanent phenomena as well. In a valid syllogism, the reason is the pervaded because its extent is less than or equal to the extent of the predicate to be proven that pervades it. And it is the proof, for the sign proves the thesis. Okay, clear? Conversely, in such a syllogism, the predicate to be proven is the pervader, for its extent is greater than or equal to the extent of the sign that is pervaded by it. And it is the proven, for the reason proves it as a predicate of the subject. Okay? It's a lot of words. What he's basically saying, okay, the sign is the pervaded because everything that is because everything that is the sign is necessarily the predicate. Okay? And the predicate is the pervader because, for the same reason, yeah, because everything that is the reason is pervaded by being that predicate. Okay? And the predicate and the reason, yeah, must either be equivalent or the predicate smaller than the reason smaller than the circle of the predicate. Okay? Yeah, that's basically what all this is saying. Yeah. In this system of translation, pervasion statements are generally formulated. Whatever is that reason is necessarily that predicate to be proven. For example, the forward pervasion of the sample syllogism is formulated. Whatever is a product is necessarily an impermanent phenomena. Translated more literally, the general formula would be rendered, if something is that reason, then it is pervaded by being that predicate to be proven. Or a simpler way is, if it is that reason, then it necessarily is that predicate. If this is applied to the sample syllogism, the pervasion would be, if something is a product, then it is pervaded by being an impermanent phenomena. For all statements in which the mode of statement is an is statement, not an exist statement, it is suitable to translate a statement of pervasion into the form of an English conditional sentence, a sentence of the form, if something is a P, then it is necessarily a Q. Yeah? If this is a thought that I thought, then it is necessarily a good one. Okay? Sounds valid, huh? Yeah. Why? If you have to prove that, because I don't think anything wrong. Yeah. Then you have to prove that. I don't think anything wrong because... What's the reason for that? Because I'm perfect. I am perfect because... Yeah. So it's very interesting, you know, when we start really examining how we think, yeah, it doesn't hold water very often. Okay. This conditional form is often relied upon in the translation, though usually pervasions are translated in the form, whatever is a P is necessarily a Q. For syllogisms in which the mode of statement is an exist statement, that's the one like, on this mountaintop, there is fire because there's smoke. There, you're trying to prove that fire exists, okay? So if it's an exist statement, the translation is always of the form, if there is a P, then there is necessarily a Q. If there is smoke, then there is necessarily fire. Is that true? Is there ever a kind of smoke that exists without fire existing? You know, but maybe you have to say there was fire instead of there is fire. Then it would work. Are there things that produce smoke without fire? Oh, on a film set. It's some kind of chemical reaction. But there isn't fire, is there? Yeah. Yeah, that's what smoke. Yeah. So, I wonder at the time that, they made this example, they didn't have film sets where, yeah. But then does that fulfill the definition of smoke? Yeah. But you also have to have a correct understanding of what smoke is. Okay. For syllogism, in which the mode of statement is an exist statement, yeah, the translation is always of the form, if there is a P, then there is necessarily a Q. Also, for syllogisms in which there is a grammatical subject and predicate in both parts of the privation. So see, we're just getting that main concept, and here he's giving us an exception and not thoroughly explaining it, okay? The translation is always of the form, if P is a Q, then P is necessarily an R. This would be like the statement, if this animal is a cat, then this animal is necessarily a mammal. Okay. As you can understand from what you read in chapter 5, two kinds of statements. It is important to understand the nature of privation as associative and not as a statement of quality. Although the reason exists exclusively in the similar class, in the sense that whatever is that reason has that quality of being a member of that similar class. The privation is not meant to communicate that the reason itself is the predicate, although it may be. Okay? So this is the, like with definition, you're talking about the whole class, whatever in the class of being a reason is in the class of being the predicate. Yeah. So the reason itself may belong in its own class, but in some situations it doesn't belong in its own class. What I just was talking about was different than the sentence of the animal is a cat. Then this animal, well, that's the privation. If this animal is a cat, then this animal is necessarily a mammal. So first you would have to ascertain if this animal was a cat. And if that worked, then it would become, if it's a cat, then it must necessarily be a mammal. But you see, he just brought up this exception and then went on and didn't explain it. Okay. Okay, so although the sign exists exclusively in the similar class, in the sense that whatever is that sign has the quality of being a member of that similar class, the privation is not meant to communicate that the sign itself is that predicate, although it may be. Yeah, for example, product is an impermanent phenomena. Yeah. More correctly, privation indicates that the sign is associated with that predicate. For instance, products exist exclusively among impermanent phenomena. Products and impermanent phenomena are inextricably and necessarily associated. If something is a product, it is necessarily impermanent. In this case, it is also true that since product itself is a product, it is also an impermanent phenomena. That is, here it may be said that the sign product is an example of the predicate to be proven, impermanent phenomena, in the sense that product itself is also an impermanent phenomena. However, as will be seen, there are many cases, for which, although there is a privation, it cannot be said that the particular sign is that predicate in the sense that the reason has the quality of, demonstrates the being of, and exemplifies that predicate. So we'll wait for him to give some examples of that before going into it. Privation does not mean that the sign is the predicate to be proven. Okay? So we must discern the sign itself, yeah? What is to be proven is the predicate, not the sign. If you don't understand the sign, Yeah, then you have to make another syllogism, so to bring understanding of what the sign is. Okay? So that's why it always says that somebody has to ascertain the property or ascertain the pervasion or ascertain the counter pervasion, because if they don't ascertain it, the syllogism may make sense to some people, but it's not going to help that person because they don't understand what the sign is. Okay. Pervasion does not mean that the sign is the predicate to be proven. Rather, the meaning of pervasion is that the predicate to be proven encompasses the sign and is invariably associated with it. The procedure of translating statements of pervasion into sentences of the form, whatever is a P is necessarily a Q, serves to express this nature of pervasion. In saying that whatever is a product is necessarily an impermanent phenomena, the point of emphasis is not so much on product itself, but on those things that are products. Okay? So that's the thing we're looking at. The things that are the members of the group products. Yeah. This statement of pervasion says that product is an impermanent phenomena, since product itself is a product, in that it says that everything that has the quality of being a product also has the quality of being an impermanent phenomena. Thus, those things such as pots, persons, consciousnesses, and so forth, as well as being product itself, as well as product itself, all those things are products that are products are also impermanent phenomena. So being a product is invariably associated with being an impermanent phenomena. This is all repetitious. He's just basically saying, if it's a product, it's an impermanent phenomena, and product is a product, so it's also an impermanent phenomena. Okay. In the statement of pervasion, whatever is a product is necessarily an impermanent phenomena. The word whatever stands in place of the points of emphasis, okay, which is these things that are products, pots, persons, consciousnesses, and so on. Ascertaining this is essential for understanding the system of reasoning presented in the collected topic texts on Buddhist reasoning. This is why I'm all for writing things in really simple.
It's very Tibetan to repeat it in different ways.
Yes. Yeah. But if you have an editor at a publishing house, they don't like that. Yeah, Tibetans didn't have editors at publishing houses, so they could repeat themselves all they wanted to in their texts. Yeah. They also didn't have proofreaders, so sometimes the texts are wrong, and you'll find that when a lama is giving a lung, the assistant and the lama are constantly stopping to correct the typos in the text, and sometimes even to say, oh, there should be a no here, meaning because the sentence should actually mean the opposite of what it literally reads, because they didn't have proofreaders. And hey, after you've carved it into a wood block,
Editing is out of.
are you going to throw that whole wood block away? I mean, it's much easier if you have a computer, you just put no in there. Yeah. Can you imagine being a scribe that says, no, I'm not going to rewrite that whole block? Okay, so now counter-pervasion. The third mode of a correct sign, of a correct reason, is the counter-pervasion. This type of pervasion is a necessary implication of the forward pervasion because, at least in terms of the form, in all cases in which the sign, in which the reason is the forward privation, it is also the counter privation. So what this means is if you understand the privation, the counter privation is also going to be true. Okay? If you understand the privation explicitly, you implicitly understand the counter privation. If you understand the counter privation explicitly, you implicitly understand the regular privation. Okay, why? Come back to your diagrams. Just draw, if you don't understand this, draw your diagram, you know. Your two concentric circles, you know, like, so if something is in this circle, it's also in the other circle. Like if you have product and impermanent, the two things are together. If it's in one circle, it's in the other circle. Yeah. And if it's not in the other circle, it's not in the first circle. Okay. And similarly, if you have a big circle with a little circle, you know, inside of it, if it's in the little circle, it's necessarily in the big circle. And if it's not in the big circle, there's no way it's going to be in the little circle. So that's the counter privation. Yeah. Okay. So you usually don't have to, if you've settled the property and the privation, you don't usually have to go through and then spell out the counter privation. Yeah, it might be helpful to do that sometimes. If you have some doubt in your mind, you know, draw the picture and you know, that can help dispel the doubt. Okay. The basis of relationship of the counter privation is the dissimilar class. Whoops, wait a minute. Is the dissimilar class in the proof of sound as an impermanent. Okay. The basis of relationship in the counter privation is the dissimilar class, which in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena is the class of non-impermanent phenomena. So everything that is not an impermanent phenomena, okay, which usually just refers to permanent things, but it could technically refer to non-existence as well. The definition of the dissimilar class in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena is that which is empty of impermanence in accordance with the mode of proof in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena. So you have to say all those things that specify that particular syllogism, okay? So it's everything that is not impermanent. So anything that is not an impermanent phenomena is a member of the dissimilar class in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena. So what are some examples of the dissimilar class? Emptiness. What else? Uncompounded space. Sky flowers. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Okay, so everything that's permanent or non-existent, yeah, that forms the dissimilar class. Thus, any permanent phenomena or any non-existent is a member of this dissimilar class. The dissimilar class is the basis of relation of the counter privation, the third mode of a correct sign. Okay, so in the forward privation, what we just call privation, the similar class is the basis of relationship, because we're trying to see how the reason pertains to the similar class. In the counter privation, we're trying to see the relationship between the dissimilar class and the reason. Okay, The reasons being the counter-privation refers to its being distinct from the dissimilar class in a particular way. For instance, the definition of something being the counter-privation in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena is that which is ascertained by a person for whom it becomes the third mode of the reason in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena. Let's just omit that, okay? So that which is ascertained as universally absent in the dissimilar class in the proof of sound as an impermanent phenomena, okay? So in other words, so many words. Huh? Yeah. What it's meaning is that everything that is in the dissimilar class, is not the reason, or the reason is not anything that's in the dissimilar class. Okay? Because your reason, because it's permanent, or impermanent, so everything that is impermanent is necessary. Everything that's a product is necessarily not impermanent. Okay? So if a sign is the counter-privation in the proof of something, it is ascertained as universally absent in the dissimilar class. Okay? So there's nothing that is the reason that is in the dissimilar class. Okay? For the example syllogism, this means the product is ascertained. So here we always somebody has to ascertain it. Okay? The product is ascertained as universally absent among non-impermanent phenomena. This is established for products exist exclusively among impermanent phenomena. Thus, you cannot find any products in a class that is mutually exclusive with the similar class. So you can't find any products in anything that is not the similar class. Okay, there are no products that are non-impermanent phenomena. Okay. Yeah, there's so many. The wording is very complicated. The meaning is not difficult. Okay, are you getting the meaning? Okay. In the definition of counter-privation, as in the definition of the other two criteria of the reason, there is an epistemological requirement of how and by whom a reason must be ascertained. Okay. And an ontological requirement of how the reason must exist in relation to its basis of relation. So the sign must be ascertained as the counter-privation, by a person who is actively involved in the reasoning process. So if the sign is ascertained as the counter-privation by somebody who isn't that interested in it, and then it's not, then something is, the juice of the syllogism isn't there, okay? Because it's not going to affect the person's mind. Yeah? And so the purpose of syllogisms is to affect somebody's mind, to bring them knowledge that they didn't have before. Okay? In this case, the ontological requirement is that the sign must be universally absent in the dissimilar class, and although, according to the requirements of the forward privation, it must exist exclusively in the similar class, it may or may not be universally present in the similar class. That is to say that the extent of the sign may be less than the extent of the predicate to be proven. Okay? It's saying that the small, you may have two circles that are equal, you may have a small circle and a big circle. Yeah, that's what all this gobbledygook is saying. Okay, with all due respect to Dan Perdue and his great effort to really translate Tibetan texts as the Tibetans write it. And they write it like this. Okay? So with all respect to that, as in the cases of the property of the subject and the forward privation, only the reason is the counter privation. So remember, the reason is the property, the reason is the privation, the reason is the counter privation. Yeah. Still, counter privation is formulated between the reason and its basis of designation, the dissimilar class. What?
Basis of designation, basis of relation.
Did I say basis of designation?
What chapter are you working on?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Still, counter privation is formulated between successively and successfully. Still, counter privation is formulated between the sign and its basis of relation, the dissimilar class. Okay. In the forward privation, the basis of relation is the similar class. In general, this is, whatever is not the predicate to be proven is necessarily not that reason. Applied to the sample syllogism, the counter privation is formulated, whatever is not an impermanent phenomena is necessarily not a product. Since all products are impermanent phenomena, anything that is not an impermanent phenomena cannot be a product. Note that this is the contrapositive, properly done, so that's some Western philosophical term, properly done by reversing the antecedent, something is a product, and the consequent, it is an impermanent phenomena, and negating both. Okay? So it's basically saying, if you look at the chart there, forward privation, if it's the reason, then it goes back and it is part of the predicate. And the counter privation is, if it's not the predicate, then it's not going to be the reason. Okay, so that's just how you formulate it. You can see the arrows there. Okay, maybe we better stop. I'm seeing that you're losing energy. Okay, so we're stopping with the nature of counter privation is reflexive of, and oops. Okay, yeah, that which is empty of impermanence in accordance with the mode of proof. It's just empty. Well, it's emphasizing, that this is an is statement, that this, that it has to work within the type of statement it is. So if it's an is statement, it has to work within an is statement. If it's a exists, it has to work within that framework. Okay. So look at some of your syllogisms, write some more syllogisms for next week. Yeah. And so we learned something this week about how to form a proper syllogism, and that some of the ways we're forming them isn't even a proper syllogism. So try and formulate some ones from your life according to the way you think and according to the way you run your life that are proper syllogisms.